Welcome to Your Family's Health, the program that focuses on healthcare issues with unique and different modalities for taking charge of your health today. Experts talk weekly with our continuing roster of guests from around the country and right here in Nassau County to keep you up to date on the latest health issues and trends. Take care of your mind, body, and soul. Spend the next half hour with the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and get on the journey to better health.
Hello and welcome to Your Family's Health. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the Nursing Department here at Nassau Community College, along with the Nassau Community College student Gina Peter. And today we're going to talk about the COVID-19, not the virus, but what the virus has done to our bodies and our nutrition choices.
I don't want to admit that I may be a victim of COVID-19 when it comes to weight, but how about you, Jeanine?
Well, I should say yes.
So let's learn about how to make better nutritional choices with our guest today, Dr. Michele Smallidge, the Director of Exercise Science Program from the School of Health Sciences, who is here to discuss health, nutrition, and exercise, as well as strategies for behavioral changes for a healthier life.
So, Dr. Smallidge, welcome to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
So first of all, I hope you're personally doing all right. And during this pandemic, how has the virus personally affected you?
Well, thank you for asking. It has definitely made me realize that I am a much more social person than I thought I was, missing personal contact, doing a lot of, getting up to speed on all the digital Zooms and remote learning was a challenge, but I was good. I do just miss the actual personal touch. As you could imagine, my background in exercise and diet, it really is a person thing, right? So having that and missing that has made a big impact.
So what are your initial thoughts on the pandemic and how it has affected most of our nutritional and exercise habits?
We don't have true data yet. That might not be for a while, but anecdotally, we do know that people have done two different things. Some people have gotten more active because they had more time outside and doing activities, and others have gotten less active, being stuck on their Zooms and their meetings and having more downtime. For the physical activity aspect of it, we might see those two extremes, and maybe that would balance out. However, the other view is that we all use food differently, but a lot of us relate that to trying to feel good places, emotionally connected to food. That may have made an impact on the fact that if we're home a lot more, we have easier availability to the foods that we love. We look for that for comfort. Being, surrounded by maybe Netflixes and movies and all the stuff that we're doing in our spare time are not as active as they would have been if we were working and commuting. And so we may have seen an increase in choosing some of those foods that we connect with emotionally. So we don't know yet, but I could, hearing from folks like yourself and some of my colleagues, they kind of come up and confess to me, I put on the 10 pounds. So again, anecdotally, we're looking at maybe some kind of rebound and weight loss efforts that might be put in place in the next couple of months to try to shake off the COVID weight. So
there are a lot of different diets out there. Mm-hmm. And so what are your thoughts about the low carb diet? We're hearing a lot about the low carb diet, the high protein diet. Should we really be eating this way? Tell me your thoughts.
So there are two ways to look at the low carb diet. It keeps getting reinvented, right? Now it's considered keto is the big catchword. Our bodies, it is an individual's body's, not your choice, but your body responds differently individually. We do. As a population, though, why it's so it's an important and an aspect to kind of think about is that we have a lot of carbs out there in our environment. They become the go-to food. So if you were to restrict your calories and have low carbs, chances are you wouldn't eat as many calories. So the benefit for that would be eventually a very quick weight loss, right? going the low fat route doesn't necessarily do that 100%, or doing one of those other macro diet changes. So if you're saying low fat being the keto versus all protein diet, both of those actually create a short-term weight loss because you're cutting out a lot of calories from not choosing the carbs. And those, some people are affected more so than others. And it's a quick response as well. You can lose weight fairly quickly by cutting out those extra carb calories.
But you wouldn't suggest it long term.
No. So yeah, the second part of your question would be the second part of your question, because it isn't a super straightforward answer, would be if you're really looking at balance, which that's all we hear, right? Balanced diet. You do want to cut out those simple carbs. And that's really difficult because those are the ones that we love, right? The sweets and the sugars and the processed carbs. So if you were to choose something that was lower carb, maybe using less processed carb would be a better way of just using that diet framework. And doing that is a very healthy way. So you would have more vegetables, more fruit, lean proteins, healthy fats, but the carbs you're choosing wouldn't necessarily be white processed carbs, right? Like it's the sweets that we have, the breads, maybe the grains wouldn't be processed. It's a hard change for most individuals, but that would be a better balance. I just want to add to that. There is a lot of research to show that the keto diet has been very beneficial for people who are borderline diabetics. And it does help with some of those metabolic issues, but you would definitely want to check with your physician to make sure that you are safe going on something like that. Because it is your body does go through a process, especially if you really were to follow the keto diet. Yeah. That would be getting your carb intake super low, under like 40 grams a day. So there is something to say about it. And I think a physician would have to follow you to make sure that it's a safe thing to do.
So you said like you wouldn't do a keto diet long term. How do you know when to stop doing keto?
Well, I don't think that we've really ever found through research anything that would be a marker for that, which is why a physician should follow. First of all, the word keto means that we're using ketone bodies as energy instead of the normal process of breaking down a carbohydrate. So we're using these bodies that are more fat-based, and the way the body works is that it also uses a pathway to change those energy levels so it can feed all the body systems, our brain being one of them, which usually uses just glucose. So it's a little complicated answer. If you're being followed by a physician and they're really working on reversing some of those changes that your body may have had or has from either borderline diabetes or diabetic, it may be a matter of time looking at some of those markers that could get thrown off during that time. So whether it's liver changes or kidney changes, depending on which way you're going with the keto diet. Some people eat quite a bit of protein where really the keto is a lot of fat. The true keto diet is fat, right? So I don't think people would be super happy if they were really truly on a keto diet, if you ask me, because it is super high fat diet. Most of our products that we see out there, it says keto safe and we're buying that stuff and eating that stuff is not necessarily the true keto diet. But leaning that way wouldn't be so bad because then you naturally are cutting down on some of those simple carbs, right? So there's not a really straightforward, unfortunately, check the box off answer there.
Okay.
That helps.
You're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard, along with the Nassau Community College student, Gina Peter. And today we're learning about health, nutrition, and exercise, as well as strategies for behavioral changes for a healthier life. With our guest, Dr. Michele Smallidge, the director of the Exercise Science Program from the School of Health Sciences. So, Dr. Smallidge, what do you think about the diets that take under consideration, the saliva more of a metabolic approach to selecting a diet for an individual?
So if you're talking about like a sample saliva or hair analysis or blood typing, So, obviously what we eat is based on our body's chemistry or we change maybe our body's chemistry through what we eat. That's how we find out about deficiencies or if there's a metabolic issue. So we're not using the substrates of our foods properly. There really has not been, especially in the general sense, a lot of information to prove that those are great ways to embark in a diet that restricts you with one food or another. There may be some ways of assessing somebody's chemistry in their body to see if they're deficient in something or have malabsorption, right? So we have the celiac diet because your intestines are absorbing particular foods like the gluten protein. So we do have a way of assessing that way. But for the general diet choice, I don't think that has had any merit and really has been researched well enough to direct it in any certain way. There's all kinds of stuff that's gone around for years, right? The blood type diet, the hair sample diet. A lot of that can maybe identify something that might be off, but then to translate that into a diet has been very difficult for researchers to do.
So because of COVID, there's been a lot of light on building your immunity. What can someone add to their meals to build immunity?
The inflammation that we're finding in general for a lot of individuals who have already comorbidities like obesity or diabetes and even heart disease has really confounded the effects of the COVID virus. So what we're finding is that if we had more of a protective diet, and what I mean about protective diet is that it's higher in antioxidants and phytochemicals and polyphenols, those are all, those help the cell structures to create more protective barrier. So we're not, they're not open to damage from maybe oxidative stress, being some pollutants that we have in our body. Some of those pollutants could be the virus or air pollutant or whatever pollutant you want to call them, a toxin. And to do that is really what we've heard from our mom and dad our whole lives. Eat your vegetables and your fruits, right? So, the National Cancer Institute does promote that type of diet to reduce cancer. And I think the approach would be the same way to reduce the inflammation in our bodies. Most of our fruits and vegetables contain those particular anti-inflammatory groups, as well as those healthier fats like the omega-3s, which would be found in the fish oil fats, the avocados, the nuts, and the seeds. Having those on a regular basis would really make a big impact on the inflammation in the body.
So would you say that eating 3 meals a day is preferable, or should we eat more smaller meals? Or what is your thought? Once a day, the fasting that we're hearing a lot about?
So I have 2 answers for that. Unfortunately, again, it's not a straightforward answer. But a lot of it is really around how our body utilizes foods that we eat from the outside source. Our bodies can produce its own energy, glucose, on its own if we do not feed it. However, the normal routine and the normal transition in our body, we have about 3 to 3.5 hours of time after one meal that we've digested and our blood sugar naturally drops to then create that hunger feeling. That hunger feeling tells our body, yes, we need some more outside source, and feed it again. That natural rhythm is where we have our meals and why we have them historically, actually. So if we were left with no clocks and we didn't know what time of day it was, and we were basically out in the wilderness, we should be hungry. And our body should be fed around post-absorption and breakdown of foods, which is about every 3.5 hours. So that's where we have the breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Our days are longer, so maybe another meal wedged in there somewhere would create that balance. In saying that, quite a bit of our Americanized diets have gotten larger, right? So sometimes our dinners are much larger. They create more of a caloric load. That's not always good. And then we may even continue to eat through dinner to after dinner. So the idea is, if you are going to have 3 meals, they should be balanced. And if you're awake long enough for a 4th meal, that would be appropriate as well. It's really about having that sweet spot of right amount of calories in at a balanced time. And for weight loss, you eat a little tiny bit less than your body needs. And eventually you do use some of those fat stores for energy overall. And that's how you create that weight loss imbalance, theoretically.
So I wanted to ask you about detoxing. What is your opinion on detoxing? Is it a myth? Is there a proper way to do it? Can you tell me more about that?
Well, that's good that you asked that, Gina. I think that actually that was the other part of my answer, is that there is some research to show that if we have the ability to create a starvation of some of our cells for glucose on a regular basis every once in a while, it's been shown to help reduce risks of cancer. And actually what you're talking about is maybe detox, but also maybe even fasting diets, right? Mm-hmm. Where it goes back centuries ago. You know, you can read about it. It's gone on forever and ever, where you take a day and you fast, or you take a few days and you fast. The cleansing is kind of similar. There has been quite a bit of research in the anti-cancer realm, where it shows that if we reduce that chance of those cancer cells, if they're potentially a cancer cell in your body, being fed sugar, it does help mitigate some of that and does help reduce your risk. And there's quite a bit of information about that and how that intermittent fasting phase that you've heard of, which kind of ties into the detox as well, is that it does help with that phase of feeding a potentially off cell. Sugar can reduce its ability to create more of its own, or change the body in a way that you don't want it to change it. So there's a lot to be said about that. If you can do it once a month, why not, right?
I like to jog at times, and I try to make it my natural routine. What would you suggest? Should I eat before I run or after I run? What is an ideal time of the day to eat? And what is an ideal time to work out?
Well, I'm going to answer your last question first. Everybody feels different energy levels at different times of the day, right? It's really when you think you're going to get that activity done is the best time to do it, quite honestly. So if you're a morning person, get up and get it done. If it is what you would like to be creating a habit or a routine, less the chance that you're going to miss it if that's the kind of morning person you are. Or in the evening, if you're settling down through a day and that's where you feel like you want to get your workout in because you're done for the day, whenever you can get it in is the best time. There hasn't been any research to show you're going to get any fitter any certain time of day. So that's one bit of information that I think would be really helpful, because people do try to challenge themselves with trying to find out the best time of day to work out. Your first question was, should I eat before I work out? There's some research about that. There's research to show that if you don't eat, you do use more, you do break down more substrates of potentially some of those fats that you want to burn, right? There's some talk a little bit about that. But in the overall scheme of things, if you don't eat it enough and your run goes long enough where you're starting to lose your stored energy, use up your stored energy, and you start to feel like you're not able to keep up with your activity, you're not going to perform very well. So if it's short enough and it's within a 30-minute, you probably won't need to eat much. When you're pushing that 45-minute to hour workout, cardiovascular workout, you're gonna want to have that little something before you do it, because your body is just going to start running out of some of that stored fuel you need for exercise. And it's the level of fitness, right? If you're really fit and you're running at a very high pace for a very long period of time, you would definitely want to have something. If you're like me and kind of jog trotting and just trying to get some cardiovascular fitness in. You might not need as much, but just maybe a little something like a half a banana or just something to keep that glucose level up. That's what your body's muscles need during a workout. Yeah, so that's just I think it depends on where you are in your fitness routine.
How much time should you wait between eating and exercise?
So a meal, you should probably wait till it's almost done, right? So around that 2-hour mark, you're almost finished digesting everything. 1.5 to 2 hours, depending on how much you ate. If it's a quick carbohydrate, simple snack, you don't have to wait too long, right? Those go in pretty quickly, like an apple or banana or any kind of fruit. So you could probably, depending on your stomach, also, you're digesting it, right? And you don't want to send all of your focus into your stomach to try to digest it and then try to exercise because your blood flow is focusing on one area. So I would say, a good 45 minutes, you should be good to go, or even a half an hour if it's a simple carbohydrate. And it depends on your gastric emptying too. So some people take a little longer than others. So you'd have to just see how you feel.
And after exercising, can you eat right away or do you still have to wait?
You could eat right away. There's a whole bunch of theory about getting your protein in right when you're done. For a couple of years, we had this whole thing about make sure your protein's right in your body in 20 minutes. As long as you get it in the next couple of hours, a good source of protein to help repair the broken down muscles and stimulate growth, protein and muscle growth. But you can eat pretty much anything right when you're done, especially if your stomach can handle it.
You're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard, along with Nassau Community College student Gina Peter. And today we're learning about health, nutrition, and exercise, as well as strategies for behavioral changes for a healthier life with our guest, Dr. Michele Smallidge, the director of the Exercise Science Program from the School of Health Sciences. So, Dr. Smallidge, one question that I have, should your diet and exercise change as you age? I'm getting older.
I don't think so. That phrase, a body in motion stays in motion, a body rest stays at rest. I love that. I love that phrase. If you're very physically active and you're always on it, cardio, weight training, flexibility, getting the whole fitness, hitting every fitness point within your program, there really isn't much you need to change. In saying that, though, if you all of a sudden develop something over the course of years where maybe your knees are bothering you or you have lower back issues, you might have to modify it. But there's been a lot of evidence to show that the aging population, if they continue doing what they're doing, there shouldn't be really any stopping them. The idea of weight training has been promoted for years, and that's even more important for the aging population, keeping up the bone health that we have in our youth, and continuing through with the muscle strengthening. I always tell my students, you're young and you're very active, and to keep it that way, keeping active in all the different fields is important because you don't want to think about it, but at some point in your life, you're going to fast forward yourself to where your parents are or your grandparents.
Right.
And if you might not be able to walk up those stairs when you want to, if you don't move and continue to do it. So, for sure, focusing on strength, in my opinion, as you age is maybe more of the focus, always keeping the cardiovascular focus because that keeps our arteries pliable and reduces the chance of hardening of those arteries and reduces blood pressure. But that strength, the conditioning that we need for our musculature and even our posture, the little old bent over lady view typically is because some of the core muscles maybe haven't been used regularly over years. Even your hamstring muscle deteriorating from not running or jumping, creates that bent over look and posture. And the stretching is always important as well. But I think that, strength training would probably move up a little higher and on the notch as we get older, just to make sure you keep that going. Lift your own groceries.
Yes.
Move your own boxes around.
So you mentioned strength training. How do you respond to someone who says that they should just do cardio to lose fat? I know a lot of my friends, they're against it because they want to keep their muscle as well. Mm-hmm. What do you have to say about that?
I've heard that question my whole life, especially from my female friends. They don't want to get big and bulky. They don't want to look like a big weightlifter. And I always refer them to some people that they can identify with, right? So I'll say, this is probably not around your age group, but would you care if you weighed 200 pounds and you looked like Madonna? No, you wouldn't really care because she's in great shape. She's not a big muscular, bulky person, but she does do heavy weight training. The idea of keeping your weight off is that we have muscle to use those calories. More muscle, more calorie use, really. You can be thin and not have a lot of muscle mass, but you also have a balance when you have more muscle. And you probably can actually eat more if you have more muscle because you're feeding that muscle too. I think the visual that I always talk to my clients about is that the person who's more cardio-based at losing weight might have some stored fat within their body that they can't necessarily see, but they don't have that muscle density that they would get if they weight trained. It's kind of a misnomer that you're going to bulk up from weight training. You might feel puffy to start because your body does have that feeling when you start weight training and you create that strength. You create that environment in your muscle, but over time, you're actually creating more muscle mass and using some of that intramuscular fat for energy. And you then become more metabolically active that way, having more muscle. Very few women and female that I know have these big bulky muscles, right? You really have to work hard to get those. And, it's a good way to have good strength throughout the body as well. So I hope that's some good message you can tell your friends, Gina.
So can
get them
you
on the
tell
weight training.
How do we get in touch with you if somebody wanted more information?
They can email me, I guess, at my University of New Haven email if there's some general questions that they have, or I could point them in the right direction for more information about healthy choices. It's msmallidge@newhaven.edu.
So thank you for being here, Dr. Michele Smallidge, the director of the Exercise Science Program from the School of Health Sciences. We hope you stay safe and continue to stay healthy. And thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you, guys.
This is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the Nursing Department here at Nassau Community College, along with student Gina Peter. And we want to thank you for listening to this week's edition of Your Family's Health.
We'd like to get your feedback on your family's health. Send your comments by emailing them to whpc@ncc.edu. Podcasts of today's show are available on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This program was produced at the studios of Nassau Community College in cooperation with the Nursing Department. Join us next week for another edition of Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.